One of the trappings found in brick and mortar religion today is the promotion of engineered charity. And to get on board and join the We're Going to Save the World cause. It's happening all through the business world and corporate America. I mean, it's become the thing. If you start a business, you want to make sure that you're tapped into saving the world and the needy. And what I mean by this specifically is when churches get behind programs and causes that claim to be focused on saving the world from poverty and starvation and economic devastation, or even giftless Christian kids at Christmas, you know, we got to get them gifts. And I understand the heart behind it, believe me. But I have long found those attempts that are out there to be empty causes in the long run. And upon examination, they actually often do more harm than good. Now, I realize everything I'm saying, most people hate. They don't agree with this, but I'm going to say it anyway. That being said, I see the need for churches and corporations to rally behind people and countries who have been devastated by earthquakes and tsunamis and famine, jump in there for a stopgap measure to help them. But when the circumstances in a country are more systemic and part of their overall picture historically for decades upon decades, I am firmly committed to the idea that the churches ought to get the heck away, again, unless they are a church in that country, okay? So in our campus website, we describe what we're about and we say, we will not support sister churches or foreign causes. Our support goes to the local community. So I have a few reasons for this view, and I want to share them, and then we'll get to our message. Have you ever wondered why a local church here in America would choose to put up a poster of a bloated, fly-covered child at its entrance and give time during their services to promote some cause seeking financial service? Why would they do that? You walk in, you see the poster hanging from the ceiling, you see a table to join up and sign up, and your heart goes out to that poor suffering child, and you think, our church is behind saving the poor. Don't churches want the people attending their church to contribute to them directly financially? They certainly do. They absolutely do. So why would they allow some side cause to promote its thing and make it part of what the church is doing? It's because of what's called the schism. And churches all want their congregates to contribute financially, but not all people do. In fact, probably 20% do and 80% don't. So where some people in a congregation will refuse to support the church financially, and yet they'll attend regularly and they'll take advantage of all the services and sermons and facilities, those very same congregates who resist donating to the church may see that child and say, you know, we've got to do something for that. And so they will they'll contribute to that worthwhile cause. What many people don't realize is a church will often gather up the donations for that to the starving child, and then they take their taste, as the gangsters call it. They take their skim off the top, right? And then they forward the remainder to the cause that was promoted, often taking a substantial portion for themselves. I've been to churches during Christmas that have dozens of those different causes, worldwide causes, all lined up. And you come in, it's Christmas time, and you're buying gifts at Walmart for your family, and you're living extravagantly, and you come to church on Sunday, and you're like, oh, you know, and so you're like, oh, we got to help this one, we got to help that one. You start shelling out, and there's posters and tables and everything else. But all of them are getting skimmed in many churches, not all of them I would guess, but many churches right off the top. It's the same con game in the love offering business. The love offering business is a con in most churches. This is how it works. The pastor invites a missionary or somebody who has a ministry to the Mormons or the outreach to Uganda or missionary efforts to the world to come and speak. And this ministry comes and the representative speaks, and then the pastor or somebody collects a love offering for their ministry. Well, let me tell you something. They take that love offering and they skim right off the top of it And they decide to give a portion of the money to the ministry. And they'll go up and say, here's a $500 check from our people. And the guy says, thank you so much. You didn't need to do that. It was so generous of you. Not realizing they kept $2,500 themselves. It's the game of, that's why people will invite, because they want to keep their attendants coming in, and they want to keep them entertained and informed, and they want to hold the love offering, and they also collect money off that. In a way, these churches are acting as middlemen. They aren't needed. It's not needed. Why would anyone allow their brick and mortar to serve as a wholesaler between the end product and themselves? Why not just give the money yourself directly to the empire? But you give it through the church, and the church then is able to skin. But this isn't the main reason why believers ought to back away from supporting overseas causes. The brass tacks reasons Christians need to wake up and refuse to support what are called NGOs. Those are non-governmental organizations or operations, known as NGOs, is they have all set themselves up as under the auspices of we're serving the poor in different countries, but when the rubber meets the road, they typically hurt the country in need, and then they typically only serve themselves and their superstructure. Look back to the time, remember when Boomtown Rats singer Bob Geldorf orchestrated Feed the World? It was in 1984, Band-Aid. It was one of the first big ones, and very moving. All the celebrities got together. They sang about Africa, not knowing that, do they know it's Christmas time at all? And that's a touching message. Bono and Boy George and George Michael singing their hearts out. We're touched by that. Millions of dollars flowed in to help save people in a country that had maybe a dozen NGOs at that time. And in that song they sang that according to the song, in Africa, nothing ever grows, nor rain nor rivers flow. That's what they say. The problem, it's not true. Things do grow in Africa. They have farmers. It does rain, and rivers do flow there. But the NGOs and the celebrities and the countries that support their NGOs with subsidies and the churches take an approach to these struggling countries, and what they say is, we are your parents. It's a parental approach. We, the United States, and the NGO coming from the United States are your parents. Our farmers will provide you with products. You be reliant upon us forever, and we'll provide for you, but indirectly, we're going to govern what you do. That's how it works. It sounds very cynical, but it's a form of colonialism. And at the base of it is control and power and neutering a vast human and the natural resources that even Africa has. They have vast resources, but they aren't able to tap them because they are forever on the dole receiving a handout. This approach, which American churches have fully embraced now because it keeps them operating as having merit, winds up causing very capable and intelligent African people, for example, one country, to rely on these imperialist donations of mama and papa, rather than equipping them, partnering with them, and teaching them how to survive on their own. What they do is they teach them how to rely on an outside third-party source. So it was 1984 when Feed the World came out with Band-Aid, hit the airwaves. Things have dramatically changed since then, but as a result of it. Instead of a dozen or 2 dozen NGOs in Africa, there are now thousands of NGO acting often in the name of Christ. And the end results, do they justify the means? They have been catastrophic and self-serving. And I'm not alone in this assessment. There have been research studies, there have been all sorts of stuff that prove what I'm saying. As I said, the influx of charitable contributions have served to neuter those people, and in their own local industry and through their own efforts could not survive. The African entrepreneurs have a saying: we can't compete with free. We, African farmers, cannot compete with free. That's what they say. Let me give you an example with rice. Prior to Feed the World, this onslaught of saving the world materially by providing, Africa actually had farmers, and rice farmers. And they provided enough rice for every African person to have a bowl of rice a week. A bowl of rice a week. Now, that's not all they ate, but one meal, they would have a bowl of rice. That's how much the farmers were able to contribute, and it was a healthy start. They were going and they were growing, it was getting better. Enter the American do-gooder Christian NGOs who said, Africa aren't eating enough rice. We have plenty of rice or corn or whatever product you want to mention over in America. We can offer our stuff to them. Our government will pay subsidies for us to take advantage of this and get it to them. We can make money. We can give it to them for free. It's a win-win. So what happened? Within about 2 or 3 years, Africans had 3 meals a day, 7 days a week of rice. And people are saying it's a wonderful success. The problem is all the local farmers in Africa of rice farmers were put out of business. They couldn't compete with free. Then guess what happened? The NGOs from other countries who brought rice in said, you know, we focused on Africa long enough. Let's focus our resources now on Ghana or on India or some other China. I don't know about rice, but let's focus our rice efforts somewhere else needy. And so they do that, and guess what happens? Now people in Africa don't get rice any day of the week because all the farmers went out of business. Why? Because they can't compete with free. Some will say, well, at least the African people got to eat rice 3 meals a day, 7 days a week for a period of time, but at what cost? Their independence, their motivation, their innovation, the loss of their farms. Not only does this American imperialism and colonialism live on 32 years after the plea to feed the world and let them know it's Christmas time, nothing has changed. It's only gotten worse. I shouldn't say nothing has changed because the NGOs have gotten wealthy. They have gotten very wealthy. They've become superstructures, multi-leveled, full businesses, and their businesses to bring in free product and deluge the African market or whatever market you want to talk about. And through their noble efforts, they get patted on the back as if they're doing God's work. It's a joke. Ironically, the Christian churches ought to have all along been going and using their resources to share Jesus. Share Jesus in those countries. That's what churches do. We share Jesus. We put our resources to feeding them the bread of life, not the bread. That's been a mistake. Again, we can participate locally in the people who are in dire need within the church for food and things. Locally, those churches can do the same. That's our job. I have to hand it to the LDS in this area. It's going to piss people off. And while they do seem stingy in their giving, and I'm personally sickened by their temples and their $3 billion malls. They do have a system where their aim is to get people self-sufficient. They're not perfect at it, and they do have a lot of problems. But in my estimation, which is limited, if every church started embracing that, we would start to see some things really change rather than this throwing bags of rice at people who then are just left like babies saying, help me, and nothing ever changes.